Welcome to Dream Farm. As I mentioned at the end of the last episode, we decided to break up my conversation with Jack Huston into two parts. So this is part two. So hopefully you enjoy more of the same. A lot of conversation about the fine points of deer management and some of the things that Jack has learned from flying that thermal drone over a bunch of really good whitetail farms. Dream Farm is brought to you by Whitetail Institute, research equals results. Hunt Stand Pro Whitetail app. Hoyt Archery. Stealth Cam trail cameras. And PH Outdoors food plot drills.
What is the optimal buck to doe ratio?
You know, and again, there are people who know this a lot better than me. I'm going to tell you what I want. And then I'm sure that it's not healthy in some way, but I just want a certain number of deer. And I can't remove as many bucks as I need to keep a 1-to-1 buck to doe ratio. You know, I think, let's say a 1-to-1 or a 1.5 buck per doe is maybe perfect, you know, because if you got one buck for every doe, or maybe slightly more than 1 buck for every doe, you're going to get a nice competitive rut. You're going to probably get your breeding wrapped up fairly quickly, which results in less overall stress. You don't have as many does making it into the second or third rut cycle because they got bred round one. You just don't have quite as much stress on those bucks because breeding is conducted more efficiently and quicker. But how do you get rid of, in an intensely managed environment, how do you get rid of all those bucks that make it to 5 or 6 years old or whatever, and you don't shoot them, and you're still trying to keep your population at a certain number? Your buck to doe ratio is going to skew towards bucks. So I've hunted, well, that farm in southern Iowa, I come back to that a lot, but I would say we were an honest somewhere between 3 and 4 bucks per doe, and it was pretty impressive. I mean, we were killing and seeing some really, really big deer during that time. They didn't seem like they left full scale. Like you'd say, well, when that happens, then all the bucks are going to leave. But I didn't really see that because, again, they don't have communication systems. It's not like they've got a way to say, well, there's more does over here. If it's not in the range that they already live in, they don't know that it exists. So if there's a doe concentration area that's in their normal range, then yeah, that's probably where they're going to be when they run out of does in this area where it's skewed more towards bucks. But if they don't range out that far and they don't know about those spots, it's not like they all leave. So anyway, my point is that it was pretty impressive, and I wouldn't be afraid to get back there again on my farm, where it's just more bucks than does, considerably more bucks than does. But what is perfect, I don't know. I mean, like I said, biologists probably know that answer. It's probably closer to 1-to-1. I think a really good managed area that's not like intensely managed, 3-to-1, 3 does for every buck, I think is doable, and you can still maintain pretty good quality in those areas. But anything, leaning more towards bucks than that, I think is better. But 3-to-1, 3 does per buck, you can still have some pretty good herd dynamic there, and grow some really nice bucks. But again, when you're knocking the population down by shooting does, you're naturally going to have a higher buck to doe ratio in that area for the same number of deer. Same thing we got here. I bet you next year when you come back, it'll be 1.5 bucks per doe, and our population will be a little bit higher again. Well, if you keep coming back, eventually it's going to be 3 bucks per doe, and the population is going to be still a little bit higher. But I just don't have a way to kill all those bucks.
Bring us to our next question. If somebody does have is in a higher density area, they have a lot of deer on their farm, what is the best way to go about lowering that population?
I think the ideal time to shoot them is early, before the rut, because again, you're looking at stress. So if there aren't as many does in estrus, and there aren't as, it's easier for the does to be bred and taken off the table, if there aren't as many. So, you're kind of splitting hairs, and I like Grant Wood's his answer to that question one time, I posed it to him, and he said, the best doe to shoot is the one that stands still long enough for you to get the shot off. and the best time to shoot her is any time it's legal. But then again, we're only talking about areas with really high densities. I don't want to, get everybody fired up about this, saying, man, you're promoting shooting a whole bunch of deer. We don't have very many. Well, no, I'm not doing that. This is only for the situation that Jack's talking about, where maybe the density is too high and they're trying to figure out how to lower it. That may not be the situation in a lot of areas that aren't intensely managed. Where you hunt in your neighborhood, there may not be too many deer, and this just flat out doesn't apply. But you shoot them as often as you can and as whenever you can. But ideally, it'd be early. What I'm afraid I'm going to have to do here is fall back on the gun seasons late, because I don't think we can kill enough of them long term here with a bow to keep up with the population growth.
How much does doing TSI on a majority timber farm like this improve your holding capacity?
I think, and this is one I've spent a lot of time thinking about, and I've talked about it on the Dream Farm series some, but I think the quality of the habitat has a huge effect on what you can hold and what you can produce. And that Southern Iowa farm was kind of my test bed for that. That farm was close to 1,000 acres. We did like 800 some acres of TSI over about a 4-year period, 800 and some. So the whole farm basically that wasn't open, we cut down the junk timber, opened up the canopy, got sunlight to the ground, created more browse. I didn't do a good enough job there of controlling the quality of the browse. I should have been burning too. That would have been step 2. That would have made a huge difference, but I just didn't understand it well enough. I was afraid of it. I get it better now. But anyway, after that was when the best hunting took place on that farm by far. And there wasn't less pressure in the neighborhood then. The only thing that changed was the quality of the habitat on my farm, and we were holding way more big deer. It had to have been some of the best deer hunting in the country at that time, and I attribute that 100% to the quality of the habitat. And I think there's 2 reasons. One we talked about, which is the nutritional level of what was available was just higher. There was so much quality browse in the timber that the deer never had to look very hard to find something that was good for them. But the other one, I think, and this is one that it's my theory, but I think I was holding more mature bucks because the bucks weren't interacting as much. So like, let's say you've got 2 bucks that are 6 years old and they're bedded on, side by side ridges, and they can see each other. They're 100 yards, 150 yards away, but I can see them. I watched him bed down. I don't feel too good about that deer being there. This is my territory. When I get up out of this bed, or maybe right now, I'm going to go over there and I'm going to show him who's boss. He's not sticking around. But what happens if they don't see each other? The amount of interaction goes down. They don't go looking for other bucks to chase off. In my experience, they just encounter them, and through the process of their daily lives, they just don't tolerate each other. So the less often that they encounter each other, it just seems to me like the way it played out for me, at least, is they weren't interacting as much. So this whole but dominance issue didn't have to get resolved every single day. So I just think there was more of them. It just held more mature bucks. So let me ask you a couple questions, Jack. What about common, say, trends that you've seen on some of these managed properties? And I've been around as a consultant on some pretty decent properties over the years, not 100 by any means, but what do you see like habitat wise? Do you see like lacking in general, like the properties maybe lack quality habitat, or what are some of the things that you see almost everywhere you go?
I think people put a lot of effort in the food plots, but you know, you go there and you see a browse line in the timber and there's no, you know, it's a blank slate in there.
Yeah.
And it's, you know, you gotta, I think those people have heard, you know, you need to do TSI, you need to have that browse for them, but maybe they just don't ever end up doing it or don't know how to start.
Right.
And that's a huge part of being able to grow big whitetails in timber country, or anywhere. And then, you know, too high of a density in a lot of places, or just not understanding how many deer are really there and what part of the equation, you know, how that plays into management.
Yeah.
Those are two big ones.
Do most of them have enough food, like in food plots? Because that's one thing that I see too, is those two kind of overlap. They all three kind of overlap. Because if you have a lot of deer, a lot of times your vegetation in the timber is not that great, and then you run out of food in the food plot sometime early winter, and you know that's not ideal either. And is that similar to what you see? But you might be actually managing on maybe a little bit higher, or not managing, but visiting a little bit higher, you know, more highly managed properties, because people are calling me in to help them figure out a management plan. Whereas you're generally coming in level 2, they already have a management plan. They're just trying to see how well it's working.
I would say probably half of them don't have enough food. You know, it's gone by January 15th.
Yeah.
Or they only care about having it around during hunting season. That's not a whole lot of people, but
Yeah.
I've flown for people who will leave it there and then, you know, have the farmer come in and harvest afterwards, and that's not doing the deer a whole lot of good.
Right. Yeah, because the stress periods like we talk about are going to be still there. I mean, those late winter, even early spring can be very high stress periods, because it seems like there should be a lot of food because it's starting to warm up, but this food's still not there.
Mm-hmm.
Another one that I found was just not understanding the fact that all bucks don't grow up to be 180 inches, because maybe 1 in every 10 bucks has the potential to be that big. Maybe in a good area, maybe it's, you know, the genetics are good, maybe it's 2 in every 10 have the potential to be that big, which means that they still have to get to that age. They still have to get to 5+ in order to really see those genetics kick in. So it's tough. I mean, the bucks don't live forever. Even in an area with limited hunting pressure, they still find a way to die. And whether it's disease, they kill each other, whatever it might be, they break their leg chasing a doe through, you know, the forest, and then they get infected and they die from that. I mean, they're vulnerable. So that's the other one I see is just a complete misunderstanding of how many bucks can reach that really high end size, and that's in the best of conditions. So
It's very tough. Yeah.
yeah, well, I think we can wrap up here, Jack. I appreciate it, and yeah, good luck on the rest of your rounds here, and you know, what you're doing is an important service. It's valuable, and you know, I've sure enjoyed having you on the farm a couple times. Hopefully we can keep doing this every year and keep seeing how the population and the, you know, the dynamics change here. Anyway, like I said, one last time for Jack, it's MidwestDeerSurveys.com, and you can find him there. But we appreciate you joining us. We'll see you right back here again soon for the next episode of Dream Farm. And remember to always dream big.